Welcome to Automotive Innovators Unplugged, spotlighting the innovators, disruptors, and forward thinkers shaping the future of automotive retail.
Each week, we'll dive into the tools, tech, and strategies that help dealers win in today's market and get a little personal with our guests.
Introducing our host, Sean Kelley, #1 Amazon bestselling author, Special Operations Combat Veteran, and CEO of Car Motivators, known in automotive as the CarViz Coach.
And JP Burkemper, automotive AI expert and co-founder of Insight, helping dealerships retain customers with state-of-the-art artificial intelligence.
Now it's time for the show. Welcome back to Automotive Innovators Unplugged, where we spotlight the innovators, leaders, and real stories shaping the future of automotive retail. I'm Sean Kelley, CEO of Car Motivators, known in the industry as the CarViz Coach.
And I'm JP Burkemper, co-founder of Insight, helping dealerships use technology to retain customers and grow smarter.
Today's episode is one that every dealer, service director, and fixed ops leader needs to hear. Because if you've been in this business for any amount of time, you know there's usually tension between parts and service, different priorities, different pressures, and sometimes completely different agendas.
And when those two departments aren't aligned, it quietly costs the dealership time, money, and culture.
And that's why we are excited to have Randy Pennington on the show today. Randy is the parts manager at Bruce Titus Group. He's also a member of our Fixed Ops 20 group and someone who brings a very different perspective to how parts and service should work together.
Instead of conflict, he's building collaboration, and instead of friction, he's focused on alignment.
Today, we're going to break down what causes that disconnect, what most dealers get wrong, and how to actually build a high-performing fixed ops team that works together and not against each other. Randy, welcome to Automotive Innovators Unplugged.
Well, thanks for the introduction, gentlemen. It's an honor. I really have enjoyed working with you, Sean, specifically, and chatting with you, JP. It's when I came into the industry in 2003, I came late to the game, right? I was 30 when I got into the industry. But I came from a military logistics background, and I owned my own telecom installation company for about 4 years. So I came in, I still don't know much about how to fix a car, right? I have technicians for that. They really help me out with that. What I did have an idea was how to get things from point A to point B. And how to use technology systems, specifically ordering systems and logistics systems, to make that happen. So it's been a fun ride. It's been a fun ride.
I love that. And most people don't grow up saying, I want to run a parts department and use all these logistical systems. Give us the quick version of your story. How did you end up in parts, and what led you to where you are today?
I graduated high school in 91, right during the first Gulf War. I knew I didn't want to go to college right away. I was done with school, but I wanted to go eventually. And Uncle Sam said, you'd like to go to school? We'll take care of that for you. Just give us a couple years. So I joined. I did 8 years with the U.S. Army as a logistical support for special operations and criminal investigation specifically. And that gave me a different mindset, right? I mean, Sean, you can attest, right? The military is a different society, a different culture. We have a very mission-focused orientation, right? Do whatever you have to do to get that mission done. And that was my background in logistics, right? Do whatever I had to do to take care of my team and my mission to get that done. So when I came into the automotive industry, I already had an agility mindset, right? You just have to be able to pivot on a dime to get things done. And for us in the auto industry, feels like it's life and death sometimes, right? We've got that car tying up a wreck. We need to get that thing out of there. And then that agility from the military really, really helps, and along with that, and kind of to the point we're talking about today, is the teamwork aspect of it, right? The military, it's all about your team, right? You have to live, breathe, sweat, bleed, sleep, everything with the guys you're with. And that's one of the things I miss about the military, was that camaraderie, that sense of of together focus, right? It's a laser pointer on an end goal mission. And what I found out here in the civilian world is that a lot of that doesn't exist, right? A lot of people are in a Western culture mindset of what can society do for me, and not what can I do to help the people around me and get to an end goal. So that's kind of when I entered the industry. That kind of my background. That's where I come from.
Was was there a was there a moment once you got into parts that I guess you realized it was more strategic than people think? And I love that you mentioned that about the military background, because one of my dreams, or is in the future, I want to have like a military owned and operated dealership. And it's crazy how so many of the military MOSs fit into specific roles in the dealership. But all that being said, that's a project for later for me. But yeah, so you started off in the dealership, and then was there a point that you were like, parts is way more strategic? I get to play military still. It's like it's
Not really. I started out as a parts driver. My brother-in-law was a parts manager of my first store. And I had just walked away from my telecom company. I had just given up on trying to fight regulation and government. I just turned it over. My brother-in-law had called me and said, "Hey, you're looking for something to do. I need a parts driver," right? And to this day, that is my favorite job I have ever had, was that parts driver. Because I got to get out there. I got to see kind of how the inner workings work for a wholesale development system. And when I took a back counter position about 2 years after that, it paid huge dividends, right? So some of those customers I still talk to, and they're customers of mine at this store now. It was never really a light bulb moment, Sean. It's always kind of been the same system, right? Logistics theory is the same. What I like to tell people is I've always been a logistician. I just do it with auto parts now, and I did it with things that weren't auto parts before.
other than the logistician factor playing to your strengths, what's made you stay in it for this long?
This is one of the few industries where you can start out at the ground level and become an owner with simple desire and will to accomplish and a work ethic, right? This is one of the few industries where the degree on the wall doesn't make as much difference as the work you put in and the mindset you bring to the game. And honestly, that's one of the big things that has kept me around.
Is that an end goal for you, Randy? Do you want to own a dealership?
I have seen what that entails, and at 53, I don't know I have that kind of energy anymore. I'm a parts manager now. I have my sights set for a fixed operations position, within the Bruce Titus group, hopefully, without if it has to be. But that's kind of my end goal. I do know a couple people that have transitioned from fixed to GMs and owners, and we're a younger man with that kind of energy, maybe, maybe. But I'm looking more on the backside of things now, right? I've done. My wife and I travel quite a bit, and I'm kind of transitioning to that more on the other side of the work-life balance, right? And to the leadership point, one of the great struggles that leaders have is to find quality people to fill the positions, right? So when I took the chair as a parts manager, I came from a back counter, and I was a very, very effective back counter for my store. But when I took the position as a parts manager, I had a hard time letting that go and not being a back counterman. And part of that, a lot of that, I think, is I didn't have staff that I could rely on. The other part of that, it goes to training and mentoring and coaching, right? So traditionally in the parts department, the guy that sits in the manager's chair was the back counterman until the prior manager left, quit, died, whatever, right? And we kind of rise through attrition. And sometimes that's a good thing. Sometimes we get lucky and we fall into the training we need. We find the coaching we need through various places. I have been with Chrysler for all 23 years. I've been with 3 stores. I try and I'm very loyal. So I find a store I like and a vision I can believe in, and that's what brought me to the Bruce Titus Group. Was the GM at this particular store had a vision that I believe is the correct one, and that's a vision of cooperation between not just fixed, not just parts and service, but fixed and variable, right? Because at the end of the day, while we all operate as 3 separate businesses, we all are under one rooftop, and we all adhere to one owner, right? So every person that walks through the door is a customer of Bruce Titus. And it is our responsibility as employees of Bruce Titus to take care of that customer, regardless of where we find that customer. So if I'm on the lot and I find a customer, it's my responsibility to help that customer in any capacity that I can help that customer. And that leads into the culture of cooperation and communication, right? It doesn't work if I'm fighting against service, because we're rowing our boats in different directions, and that just doesn't work. And it goes the same with variable, right? So when fixed and variable work together, it's amazing what accomplishes, right?
Well, yeah, that's definitely, I think that's an issue in the industry that's getting a lot more attention. The business is fixed, variable parts, that's all siloed, and it is one operation. The more streamlined you can make that, the more organized and the more streamlined everything's going to be. And, customer is always the one that is most important, and serving up the best customer experience is having all of those pretty streamlined. And you mentioned something else, I guess, piggybacking off of that, there is a stereotype in our industry. Parts people kind of are introverts. They can be mean even. Everything's always parts fault, right? So why do you think historically that there's been that friction between parts and service and even variable?
I think the stereotype exists for a reason, right? I'm happier in my stacks than dealing with a crowd of people. We really are. Traditionally, parts people are introverts. We're much happier looking at numbers. We don't have to get into the fuzzy dealing with numbers, right? It's a hard fact. Do I have the part? Do I not have the part? How do I get it? Whatever. And that kind of closets parts department people, right? They're not in the public eye as much as service, right? A service advisor touches more individuals in a week than most people in the dealership touch in a month, right? Parts guys, we touch 1 or 2 in a month, and we're like, oh my goodness, that's way too many people. So that kind of leads to that, isolationist mindset, where I think a lot of parts people look at it's us against the world. And sometimes we make decisions and choices that affect the rest of the dealership, right? A parts department, I can shut variable down in a day. I can shut service down in an hour. But it's my responsibility to make sure that they can run as effectively and as efficiently as they can. That's the purpose of a parts department, is to keep the grease on the cog so everything is rolling as well as it can. So I think at the end of the day, that stereotype is earned in a lot of cases, right? And parts people need to be self-aware enough to realize when it's our error that made the problem and own it, right? And by that same token, though, shine the light when it isn't ours, right? I am the first to tell you it was my mistake. It was my department's problem. Let's see how we can keep this from happening again. But that self-responsibility goes all the way around, right? And parts is always an easy bus to throw something under because we're not in the public eye, right? You tell Joe customer it's parts department fault, they're not going to come back here and yell at me. They just don't.
Sounds like you're on top of it. And there's a lot of people that aren't. What do you think those breakdowns cost a dealership?
Everything.
Yeah, and do they even realize how much it hurts them?
No. I traditionally don't think that people do realize what that costs in times of efficiency loss for your technicians, in time for variable relationships with variable customers, with service customers, right? I don't think people do realize it. And I think it's hard to put a number on what that value actually is. You can look at things like tech efficiencies, right? When that communication breakdown happens, your tech efficiencies are going to fail. Your fixed first visit scores, your CSI scores, those things are going to fail, right? We have a direct impact on that. And we need to keep that in mind. Even though those metrics aren't directly applied to us in parts, we have a very real impact on them. And I have always looked at it, there is no reason not to have open and honest communication with the other parts of my house. Here at our little Jeep store for Bruce Titus, I've got very well blessed, right? When I came on board, the GM at the time, Michael, like I said before, he was the reason I came on board, was because I saw what he was trying to do, and I believed that vision was in line with what I want to accomplish. And our service manager, Jeremy, and my GM, Nate, Sean, you know both of them. We have a very good working relationship, and the three of us together have taken a stance that I don't care what goes on, we'll get through it together. But a lot of that is open communication, right? And we talk every day. We have just little micro meetings of what's going on, what kind of struggles we're having, how can I help you with that struggle, and that kind of thing. A lot of it is just acknowledging the struggle, right? And how can I help you? Not, I heard an interesting term in one of the prior podcasts, and it's entitlement versus empathy, right? That really resonates. Am I doing something for my own benefit, or am I doing something for the benefit of the team and the customer? And that's what it boils down to, right? And every day I get to wake up and say, what kind of a challenge do I get to help somebody solve today? That's exciting.
That's such a different perspective than most. And, Randy, it's interesting. This week I've been coaching a service team up in the Northeast, and it was crazy. There's an advisor there who's been there for he's been in the role for like 5 or 6 months. And the guy's writing 15 tickets a day. He's running over 100,000 in profit. Great contribution. And but he's still trying to figure out if he fits into that team, and if he should be an advisor or go back to what he was doing before. And I was like, what's going on? What would make you leave? And he says to me, he's like, well, there's only 2 people who have my back. Everyone else, I feel like they're against me. And I'm like, and I was like, who? And he of course mentions someone from parts. And I'm like, so later on I'm coaching the parts team, and I find out that the person over in parts doesn't even realize that he was, that there's like this battle. So I love what you said about acknowledging the struggle, because it's like, if you can shed light on these struggles and the issues and just have real business conversations, and talk through it, you're going to solve it. So it sounds to me like, communication is the first thing. It's a big piece of what makes a great relationship between service and parts. What else, in addition to communication, what else does a really healthy relationship between the departments look like?
The understanding that at the end of the day, taking care of the customer is the most important thing, right? That's the big thing. And I think a lot of parts people get lost on that, and we will deflect, right? So I worked for Stellantis. Clearly we have some back order problems. And traditionally, parts people will lay the manufacturer under a bus, right? We couldn't get that because of whatever, X, Y, and Z. At the end of the day, and this is where that military mindset of agility with a focus on the mission really helps me, because there's more places to find a part needed to fix a car than just my manufacturer. Don't tell my manufacturer I said that. They're not going to like to hear it. But it's true, right? So a lot of times we will say, well, it's not available, and that's it. We just stop looking, full stop. That's not helping anybody, right? So here in my team, in our system here, that's our first step, right? Is it available? Is it available in a timely fashion? If it isn't, make it happen in a timely fashion. Find out where we can get it, right? So For instance, we had a Ram 1500 in here a few months ago, 4-wheel drive actuator, and the rear differential went out. It's on back order. It's on a massive back order. There's a dealership in Guam that has 4 or 5 of them. My counterman bought it from Guam. He just, you made it happen, right? We just, part of that is setting processes in place though too, right? So in that case, that's a warranty repair. And a lot of dealerships will say, well, who pays for the freight? You know, because getting the manufacturer to pay for freight on a warranty claim, that's a little difficult sometimes. But it comes down to these processes, and you have to have processes in place. And the fascinating thing about a process is that it can evolve with the needs of the team, right? So if I set a process in place, that is not written in stone. We can revisit it. We should revisit it, because what I set down as a process today with my service manager, my GM, and my team's input, that might change next week, right? The way to deal with that process may evolve over time. And it's, a lot of people, I think, will set down a process and you say you have to follow the process, but the process gets outdated. So we have to revisit that process and check, is this still the best way to do this? So in that particular case, my service manager and we already have a process for dealing with freight for warranty jobs. And so it's a no-brainer. If the freight isn't over a certain dollar amount, it's just get the job done, make it happen. If it's over that amount, then my service manager and I can get together and collaborate and figure out, is this worth that? Or do we try and pass that on to the customer or whatever it is?
So processes, communication, beliefs, having everybody aligned. What changes have you seen, you know, throughout getting everybody on the same page?
The big one's turnover. We don't have a very large turnover, right? So my service manager and I've been here 5 years next month. July will be 5 years. He's just over 4 years. My service team has been together my service drive team, they've been together for 3. My parts team, I finally solidified about 1.5 years ago. That's a lot of it, but that comes from a place where people want to be, right? People want to feel included. We spend enough time in our rooftops that if you don't enjoy the time there, it's not going to be long before you're looking for another home, right? And one of the things that brought me here, part of that culture, part of that vision that Michael had, was it felt like home. When I walk into the store, I do not wake up in the morning and say, damn, I have to go to work, right? Again, I get to wake up in the morning and say, what kind of a challenge can I help somebody solve today? And I truly enjoy the people I work with. And that goes a long way, right? Because now everybody knows we're on the same team. And it kind of goes back to that military mindset where I have my partner's back. I know that my partner's going to have my back. And that doesn't always work. We've had team members we've had to let go because they weren't a proper fit for the culture. Even if they're high performing, at some point, if they're not a good fit for the culture and environment, that high performance comes at a cost. And that cost is typically efficiencies and effectiveness in other areas.
Yeah, absolutely. Randy, I'd like to get tactical for a second. What are the biggest mistakes parts departments make when working with service?
I'm beating the dead horse, JP. It comes right back to communication, right? A lot of times parts guys aren't honest about what it's going to take to get that part. I think a lot of times we try and give a more rosy picture, right? Yeah, I can have that tomorrow, when in fact we already know that's not going to happen.
Yeah, and you think that frustrates the advisors.
Exactly. We're setting the service team up for failure, and now they have to backpedal and try and satisfy a customer, and they start giving excuses. And when we force them to do that, that's exactly when they're going to throw parts under the bus because we've earned it. So it comes back to that. Everything in my vision and my belief system comes back to honest and open communication with the people we work with, right? And talking tactically, right? It's also the agility of a mindset. Having the mindset of, yes, this might be a part for a manufacturer. I work in their manufacturer store, but that might not be the only way to get that part. And having that limber attitude to be able to step outside that closed box and say, how else can we get this done? Because at the end of the day, that's what I need to have happen. I need to get this done. And I think that causes a lot of friction between service and parts departments.
Let's flip this because that's a great question, JP. Let's give Randy a chance to point the finger. But this isn't directed at anyone in specific, right? But what are the biggest mistakes service departments make in general when working with parts departments in general?
Assuming I can pull that part out of thin air. That's the overpromising and under-delivering. That's
you don't have one of those magical bags like from the Cat in the Hat.
You know,
Randy?
I told my GM Nate. I told him just last week he was asking for something that was very, very difficult, and I said, "Look, I'm a magician and I can pull off the impossible, but not every day. Sometimes even we've missed that, right?" So I think one of the biggest struggles that a parts department would say, and they're going to point the finger right at a service department, say they overpromise. And I think a lot of times, right, you're trying to keep that customer happy. So you're trying to tell that customer what they want to hear instead of the truth. And I think most people would rather have a harsher truth than a lie that might taste better, right? I would much rather have a truth because then I can prepare for it, right? If I know up front that part's 2 weeks out, I can prepare for it. If my service advisor is honest about that, and he says, "Hey, look, we're trying everything we can, but realistically, you're probably 2 weeks before we can get that part. I have loaner vehicles. We have other options. Is there something else we can help you with to deal with that struggle in the meantime?" And I think at the end of the day, customers just want to know, right? And how many times have you heard the biggest complaint in the service department is the service advisor never does the contact with the customer, right? They don't touch base with the customer and let them know what's going on.
Status callbacks are like the biggest issue that dealers deal with from their customers, and those usually come from the customer not being touched base with. Yeah,
right. And one of the things we do here that I've done for a long time is I think parts departments have missed the boat on the status callback, right? Because my biggest customer is my service advisor, and we don't tell them every morning. A lot of parts departments don't tell their service team, "Hey, this is where we're at on these back ordered parts. This is where we're at on what we ordered yesterday." We try and do that every day here and let my appointment coordinator know, "Hey, this part came in for this customer. Let's get them in." I think a lot of times parts departments end up with a lot of parts they didn't particularly want because they didn't let the service department know, "Hey, the part for that customer came in. Let's get them in and get it done." So I think parts departments miss the boat on status calls as well, right? And now my service advisors don't know what's going on. So when that customer calls in, they're automatically put on the defensive. And let's keep them from having to be on the defensive. Let's give them all the information we can give them. There's nothing gained by holding the information.
And what do you think the best way, the most efficient way to do that is, Randy? Is it communication? Is there technology that can make that easy?
Absolutely, technology makes it easy. We use a couple different systems. We use an internal messaging system between my fixed operations team. We use that. We use it's an old school dispatching route sheet that I built a while ago that my dispatcher can look at and see the status of any particular RO, and my parts team will update that anytime we check a part in that's for a service customer. We update the route sheet. We go old school again, the sneaker down, right? We walk out there and let them know, "Hey, this part for this customer came in. Is the car still here? Let's get it done. If it's not here, let's get it back in." Down to our DMS has special order reporting every day that goes to my appointment coordinator. So it boils down to whatever works for the culture you're in, right? Some cultures are super high tech and they don't want low key. You don't want paperwork flying around. You don't want anybody word of mouth. We try and do all of it, whatever's going to work, right? So everybody gets their information in a different capacity, right? Myself, I'm more of an auditory learner. One of my service advisors is more of a visual learner, right? So he has to see it. If I tell him, he's never going to remember. But if I show him, if I give him a paper, absolutely he's on it.
Randy, it's crazy you're bringing that up because literally this morning I was coaching a parts manager, and he was like, "Help me figure out how to teach my team." And I was like, "What do you mean?" And he's like, "I taught two of my people something, and then they, and it was like a week later, it was like they didn't even remember having the convo." And that was the first thing I asked him. I was like, "What type of learner are they?" And he's like, "What do you mean?" I was like, "How familiar are you with the different types of learning?" And he's like, not." And so I was like, "Well, how do you best learn?" And he goes, "I got to see it. If you show me something and I watch it, then I can I got it down pretty quick." I'm like, "Okay, you're a visual learner." And we started talking. I love that you understand the power of human learning and how to tap into it best.
When I was a kid, I grew up with my grandparents. My mom's a teacher. Her sisters are all teachers. We come from an education heavy family. My grandfather was a civil attorney. Education was very, very important to us in my family. And so I'm a lifelong learner, right? I'm currently chasing my next degree. I don't particularly need it for my career, but I think the brain is a muscle, just like anything else, right? And the second you stop using it, the second you stop exercising it, it starts to atrophy, right? So we have to keep it agile. We have to keep it active. We have to keep feeding it data and learning. And as we do that, one, it forces us to be a little more open-minded than maybe we want to be. It forces us to think outside the box because we're always searching for new information. So it comes in handy. And not everybody, to your point, Sean, not everybody is self-aware of what style of learner they are, right? And I think as leaders, it's important for us to learn how to best engage with those around us, not just those below us, but those that are around us and above us. And um, you NADA, one of the classes at NADA, they have a thing, and this is where I learned it. I don't know if it's where it came from, but it nails on a chalkboard or music to my ears, right? And it's all in how the person you're communicating with is perceiving the message you're trying to get across, right? So, JP, for instance, if I'm talking to you in a method that I would receive that information well, but it's not a method you receive that information well, you're not going to receive a positive message, even if I'm trying to impart a positive message, right? So it behooves us as leaders to know how to best communicate with the people we're communicating with so that they get what we're trying to impart, right? And a lot of that comes down to an initial conversation, right? And kind of we did a thing at that first 20 group I was at with Sean, where it was kind of a get to know your neighbor kind of interaction where we ask a couple questions. What was your first car? What was your first job? Right? Where do you see yourself in 10 years? That kind of thing. And through doing that, through that kind of engagement, you can kind of suss out what the person, how they like to communicate, right? Because they will tell you how they like to communicate. And once you know how they like to communicate, half the battle's done.
Yeah, yeah. I'll add a tip. I'll share a tip with the listeners too. You guys want to hear it? All right, on how to figure out what type of people, what type of learner they are. Are they auditory, visual, or kinesthetic? So do just what Randy. It's just what you said. You're talking to them when they're describing an experience or what they want to do or what they want to accomplish. If they use words like, "Do you see what I'm saying here?" or "Let me show you something. Look at this." That cues you that they're visual. Auditory learners are going to be like, "Hey, do you hear what I'm saying here?" I want them to hear me out. They won't listen. They use a lot of listening type words, and then the kinesthetic friends, they say things like "feel." I need to experience this. Like, do you understand like how that makes someone feel? They'll use a lot of words like that, and it's a good way to kind of figure out which type of learner someone is indirectly even when they don't know. I love what you said there.
Well, Sean, you're definitely the expert on that stuff.
Well, I have to know some of those things to be
Yeah,
do an
I
idea.
think that's part of the job, right? Well, Randy, you said a couple of really interesting things. One, just getting to know how your team learns and communicates best, but also, there's other ways of doing it, maybe that are different than yours across different service departments. And I know that you're part of the Car Motivators 20 Fixed Ops 20 group. You just mentioned that. I was wondering, what's it like being around those other high level operators? What's it taught you about how to run a service and parts department?
I'll tell you that the most humbling thing I have ever done in my life was become a back counter,
Become a what?
a back counter person, right? When I click a back counter in a parts department, I didn't know anything about any car at all. I could change the oil in my Ford Ranger and that was it. Fortunately, I had enough self-awareness at that time. I gathered all of my techs around. I said, look, I'm only going to be as effective as you guys train me to be. So I need you guys to teach me cars. The keyboard, that's easy. The computers, the logistic systems, I've got that. What I don't know is the cars I'm working with, right? So that forced me to learn at 30, I was forced to learn humility, right? And I look at the 20 groups, and I've been going to them for almost 9 years now, to various 20 groups. And I walk out every meeting feeling like that freshman right on the field again. I walk out of every single meeting learning something from the other people in the room. One of the managers I used to work with had a saying he loved to say. He says, for any problem, there's an answer in the room if you get enough people. There's always an answer in the room, right? My experience is mine. JP, you come from a different background, a different experience, right? When we're tackling the same problem, your view of that problem is going to be different than my view of that problem. But what I have found is it's important for me to hear how you view that problem, one, and two, what you think a good solution to that problem may be. Because the answer is in the room. And that's what I find the value in this 20 group is. This one specifically, but in all of my 20 groups I've been involved with, is the other managers, the other leaders in the room are suffering and struggling with very similar problems to what I have, that maybe they have a different approach that is working for them. And I've brought many of them back to my own store. And I like to think that I have some input and help some people with some problems. Yeah.
Literally, I didn't want to interrupt you, but I was thinking about how much value you add to the team, Randy. We appreciate, everyone there appreciates. No, you really does. It's amazing. Randy has a really powerful ability to like listen and understand people's issues before he helps them, and he always add value. It's great.
Well, Randy, I was wondering if you had a specific example of something that maybe a challenge you were facing and were go to the 20 group, learned something and brought it back, and maybe what it changed for you.
Tires, right? Tires are kind of the bane of the auto world, right? The automotive dealership, we hate tires. You don't make money on them. They're just basically a loss leader or a retention tool. And a lot of parts departments sell them at bone cost or less than cost just to make the sale. And I was in a 20 group with a gentleman named Ray Miles from Stampede in Idaho. And he says, why do you do that, Randy? And I gave him the same industry line, right? Tires are a loss lid, all of that nonsense. And he says, that's crap. You know, it's crap. And he taught me to approach it more from the value that a dealership tire program has for the customer. Particularly for Stellantis and the Mopar system and the tire work system, we have a road hazard nationwide coverage, right? So price point isn't a thing. It's only a thing if we make it a thing. And that was one of the changes I brought back to my store and immediately implemented. It's still not, we're not burning the world on fire with tire sales. We're not. But what we found is that we're able to stay competitive with our local other tire vendors, and still make a little better profit on those tires because of the added value of the Mopar tire program, right? And communicating that to our customers and to our service team that, hey, this is the benefit of having these tires. That's just one example. We have in my office, you can't see it, but in my office, I have a big file cabinet, and we call it the pantry. And you open the file cabinet, it's just full of snacks. And it's a honor system, pay as you go, right? And it's got stuff like Pop-Tarts and bags of chips and cup of noodles or whatever. And everything in the pantry is 50 cents. If you've got 50 cents today, you throw 50 cents in there, right? And that was maybe not benefiting the store from a gross profit thing, but it helps build that environment and that culture, right? So, and my team loves it. They come in all the time. My vending machine guys don't like it because I'm putting him out of business. But even the variable team will come in and say, "What do you have in the pantry today?" They'll just rummage through there and throw coins in there. But it's things like that. Not everything at the 20 group comes down to transactions and profitability, right? What I have found, and this is for me one of the more powerful lessons I've learned through the 20 group is you build the culture, you build the environment, you build your processes right, and the profit will come.
Randy, that was something I noticed from our very first 20 group meeting. I noticed right away, like you had a passion for leadership. So let's talk leadership. What role does leadership play in fixing the parts versus service battle and disconnect?
It's the biggest role, right? Oh, and here's the thing about that. That leadership doesn't have to be the parts manager, right? That leadership doesn't have to come from the top. It's good when it does, but that leadership sometimes can come from the bottom, right? So they sometimes come from somewhere in the middle of the chain, right? It just willing to be a leader. And I think a lot of employees don't believe that they are enabled to be leaders.
Yeah, I have to have the title to be a leader.
Right. I think a lot of people, they see I can change the world, but I have to be in that position before I can make that change. And it's you don't have to be in that position to make that change. I wasn't a parts manager before I had started pushing my dealership to the culture and the environment that I thought was right. All right. And it starts with little things. It starts with being personable. It starts with treating your coworkers the way you treat your customers, right? It comes from being available and open to communication and responsible for when we make mistakes and owning those mistakes. And I think that's where it leads. That's where it comes from. And I think it's infectious, right? So if you create a culture of enabling your people to make decisions and bring up ideas and thinking, hey, maybe this isn't the best way to do that, I think a lot of stores get stuck in a dictatorial system, right? Where the parts manager, the service manager, the GM, or whatever it is, says this is the way it's going to be. And if it's not this way, then there's the door, right? And I think one of the great things we've done here is we've enabled our team to come to us and say, this isn't working. Maybe there's a different way. This is how I think it might work better. And going back to those processes being written in stone, right? Part of the joy of a process is it can evolve, right? And sometimes my point of view or the service manager's point of view or the GM's point of view, we're missing a key aspect that we don't see. And the guy on the ground gets to see it. The guy at the 10-foot view gets to see it. And us at the higher view, we don't see it. So leadership can come from everywhere. And it should come from everywhere. And it's our responsibility in these management positions, in these leadership roles, to enable our staff to become leaders, to become better.
Randy, I want to hit you with one more. When things are really running well, you know it, right? You have those months. What kind of results do you see when parts and service are truly aligned? As far, like when the follow-ups are happening, does it impact RO count, technician efficiency? Of course, customer satisfaction. How about gross profits? What's happening in those months that really sticks out? Can you maybe talk about one month you had where things were just dialed?
March of last year, we set a historical store record. I'll give you a year. So, for example, last year we grew gross profit in the parts department grew by 27%. Net retention grew by 34%. All of that came down to running fixed operations as effectively, efficiently as we can. At the end of the day, right, the technician is the guy bringing in the dollar. So every second that technician isn't able to fix a car is a second that we don't get back and we lost money on. So from that viewpoint, it is imperative for a parts department to make sure those technicians do not have to sit idle for any reason, whether it's a part back order or I don't have the part on hand. So that goes right in play with the metrics that a parts department is held accountable for. Things like obsolescence, things like off-the-shelf fill rate, things like annual turn. I'm very proud to say that when I got here, our obsolescence was 58.6, something like that. We're at 3.8 right now, and it's taken me about 5 years to do it, but we're there. Our off-the-shelf fill rate's about 93% day over day over day, and our annual turn's about 8. So we're right where we need to be there, and all of that comes from listening and the importance of having that right part at the right time at the right price for that technician so that he can keep moving that metal so he can get that car fixed.
Yeah, very cool.
Randy, this is where it gets real. If a dealership listening right now knows they have tension between parts and service, what's the first move they should make?
And I come down to communication, right? I find a lot of that tension is because parts doesn't understand the struggle service has and vice versa. Right. So I think a lot of times any dealership that is facing that, put the two parties in a room or job shadow for a day. Right. I think that's super powerful. Right. Most parts people don't understand what a service drive operates like on a day-to-day basis. They don't understand how frenetic that area is and how energy responsive that has to become. They don't understand the struggles that a service advisor goes through on a day-to-day basis, and vice versa, right? Back in the parts department, we're much more hard part oriented, right? Parts don't talk back to us. My numbers are what the numbers are. In the service drive, it's diametrically opposed to that. It's all fuzzy. It's all emotion. It's all people. And I think that's a lot of that friction comes from there. So I think if you are having that problem in your store, having your leadership swap places for a day, just so they understand what that looks like, right? They don't even have to have any input throughout the day. Just observe and report, right? It's a big thing. Observe and report. And I think that goes a long way because now I understand what my service manager is struggling with. And once I understand what he's struggling with, I can understand a little bit better how to help him ease those struggles.
Yeah, and talk about a great way to get buy-in. It's like, man, I'm coming to your level to experience what you go through so I can understand it so we can make it better. I mean, no wonder you retain your employees.
I love it. Where do you see the relationship between parts and service evolving over the next 5 years? Do you think technology is going to help? You think it hurts? Will AI play a role?
That's a great question. I think AI is absolutely going to play a role. Absolutely. From every aspect, from cataloging parts to diagging problems. I think AI has great potential there. But like many areas, AI is going to need some good guideposts and some good guardrails to make sure that it doesn't lead us astray. I think the capacity of just trusting the machine can really lead some fixed ops departments in the wrong direction. They're going to struggle with that. I think that's absolutely going to happen. One of our big fears in the auto industry as the move towards electrification was happening, there's fewer parts on a car, right? A Tesla has a whole lot fewer parts than my Dodge Charger, just because of the nature of the drivetrain. So I think a lot of departments are worrying about how that's going to impact, what that impact looks like over the next 5 to 10 years. And I think that becomes more imperative that we retain our customers for the everyday wear items, right? Your tires, your wiper blades, your cabin filters, those kinds of things. I think that becomes super imperative.
Yeah. And are you guys using any type of AI tools for those processes?
Our service department doesn't use any AI, at least not in the diagnostician area. Our parts cataloging is rolling out an AI chatbot next week. Actually, I'm in a conference next week for that. So we'll be rolling that out, and I can report back how well that works.
I'd love to hear that. Is that internal or is that customer facing?
No, it's going to be internal at first. I imagine it's through Stellantis, through Star Parts. But I imagine if it rolls well through internally, that they'll roll it out to the OEM facing for a customer.
Randy, this was an incredibly valuable conversation. I think what stands out to me is this: what many dealerships think is a department problem is really a communication, alignment, and leadership opportunity. So when parts and service works together, everything improves and you eliminate a lot of these sunk costs that you don't even realize you have.
And when they don't, it creates friction that impacts the entire operation, whether people realize it or not.
Absolutely agree.
Randy, we really appreciate you sharing your perspective and the way you've approached this differently. And to everyone listening, if you're in fixed ops, this is a conversation you should be having inside your dealership.
If you got value from today's episode, do us a favor, like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss future conversations with the leaders shaping the future of automotive retail.
Yes, and share this episode with your service manager, your parts manager, or your GM, because this one can make a real impact.
Have a good day. It was very nice to put a face to the voice. I enjoyed listening to you guys. It's good to meet you. If it's sunny where you're at, enjoy the day, sir.
Thanks again for listening. Thank you, Randy. We'll see you next time on Automotive Innovators Unplugged.